History remembers the fire that burns the world down. It counts the bodies, 50 million lives extinguished in the frantic chaos of the 20th century, but it rarely examines the spark. Before the tanks roll into Poland, before the gas chambers are built, and before the rallies in Nuremberg, there is only a piece of paper lying on a desk in the Vatican in 1884. It is a desperate plea for a papal dispensation. A request for permission to marry. Why? Because the bloodline is too close. The groom is the bride's second cousin, perhaps even closer. The Catholic Church hesitates. They see a biological danger. They see a genealogy that loops back upon itself, a tangled web of rural secrets. Yet the stamp comes down. The permission is granted. This is the terrible paradox of time. If the Church denies this request, the timeline of human suffering changes forever. But the ink dries. The union is sealed. We are not looking at a political origin story today. We are staring into the microscope of a damaged family unit. We are dissecting the marriage of Alois and Clara, the toxic laboratory that manufactures a monster. We begin with the architect of the trauma, the father, Alois. But he is not born Alois Hitler. He enters the world in 1837 as a mistake. He is Alois Schicklgruber, the illegitimate son of a peasant woman in the Waldviertel region of Austria. In this strict, rural society, illegitimacy is not just a legal status, it is a permanent social stain. It is a mark of shame that hangs around his neck like a heavy stone. He grows up without a father, wandering between farms, learning early that the world is cruel to those without a title. This psychological wound defines his entire existence. Because he feels small, he decides to become large. Because he feels chaotic, he devotes his life to absolute order. Observe him now in his 40s. He is no longer the peasant boy. He is a senior customs official of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The uniform is his new skin. The stiff collar, the brass buttons, the cap, these are not just clothing. They are armor against his past. When Alois puts on the uniform, the bastard child disappears, and the representative of the emperor remains. He becomes obsessed with status, titles, and public respect. He demands to be addressed by his full rank, but the name Schicklgruber still haunts him. It sounds rustic, weak, un-German. In 1876, nearly 40 years after his birth, he makes the most critical decision of his life. He goes to the parish priest and legitimizes himself. He claims the name of his stepfather, Hitler, but the clerk writes it down differently. Hitler. Hitler. The sound is sharp, hard, efficient. It snaps like a whip. Consider the gravity of this moment. If he remains Alois Schicklgruber, history collapses. The crowds in the 1930s could never chant Heil Schicklgruber. The rhythm is clumsy, almost comedic. The name change provides the sonic weapon for the future dictator. But inside the home, Alois is not a leader. He is a tyrant. He treats his family like a border crossing. He inspects them. He enforces regulations. He possesses a short, violent temper that explodes without warning. He drinks at the tavern, holding court, demanding silence when he speaks, and then brings that same suffocating atmosphere back to the dinner table. He is a man who believes that affection is a weakness and that fear is the only currency of respect. He is trying to beat the shame out of his own soul, but instead he prepares to beat it into his children. This is the man who waits for a bride. He needs a wife who will not challenge his authority. He needs a servant. If Alois is the hammer, Clara Pölzl is the anvil. She absorbs every blow, every shout, and every demand without breaking. But the shape of her soul is permanently altered by the pressure. To understand the son, we must look into the eyes of the mother. She enters the narrative not as a lover, but as a hireling, a servant. Clara is 23 years younger than Alois, a generation apart. She comes from the same bloodline, the same village, the same pool of genetic stagnation. She is quiet, pious, and deeply submissive. In the Schicklgruber Hitler household, she begins her tenure as a housemaid. She scrubs the floors, cooks the meals, and tends to Alois's needs while his previous wife is still alive. The dynamic is set in stone long before the wedding bands are exchanged. She looks up to him. He looks down on her. She calls him Uncle Alois. Even after they are married, in the intimacy of their shared bedroom, she struggles to drop the title. For years, she continues to address her husband as uncle. This is not a partnership of equals. It is a relationship defined by a crushing hierarchy. The master and the maid, the officer and the peasant girl. Physically, she is the ghostly opposite of her husband. While he is red-faced, thick-necked, and imposing in his uniform, Clara is pale with soft features and large, staring eyes. Photographs from the era show a woman who looks perpetually startled, as if she is waiting for a loud noise to shatter the silence. She carries a melancholy air, a heaviness that seems to predict the tragedies awaiting her. Psychologically, Clara embodies the archetype of the suffering mother. In the domestic ecosystem, she plays a dangerous role. She does not protect the children by stopping the abuser. She protects them by compensating with suffocating love after the abuse has happened. She teaches the lesson that authority cannot be challenged, only endured. She creates a sanctuary of tears rather than a fortress of defense. When Alois's second wife dies of tuberculosis, the path is cleared. The maid steps out of the shadows. But this is not a romance. It is a recruitment. Alois needs a housekeeper who doubles as a wife. He needs stability. Clara, conditioned by a lifetime of rural obedience, accepts her fate. She steps into the role of the matriarch, but she never sheds the psychology of the servant. She moves through the house quietly, tiptoeing around the explosive temper of the man she serves. This power imbalance is the soil in which the future dictator grows. The son observes this daily ritual, the roaring father and the weeping, submissive mother. He learns that strength is masculine and loud, while weakness is feminine and silent. He learns that to survive, one must either be the wielder of the whip or the back that bleeds. There is no middle ground in the Hitler household. But before the son can be born, the bloodline itself presents a legal obstacle. They are too close. The biology is too tangled. And the church is watching. The year is 1884. Alois stands before the local parish priest in Braunau. He is impatient. He is a man of the uniform, used to giving orders and having them followed. But here, in the dim light of the church, his rank means nothing. The laws of biology and the laws of God are standing in his way. The priest shakes his head. The marriage cannot happen. The genealogy is a mess. Alois is Clara's second cousin. But because of the murky history of his own father, the church suspects they might be even closer. Perhaps uncle and niece. The exact biological overlap is lost in the whispers of the village. But the official verdict is clear. Impedimentum consanguinitatis. The impediment of blood relationship. For a man like Alois, who has spent his entire life running away from the shame of his birth, this is a humiliating blow. His respectable life is once again threatened by his own DNA. But he does not give up. He attacks the problem like a bureaucrat. He files an appeal to the bishop in Linz. The bishop refuses. The stain is too deep. Now the couple is desperate. Clara is already pregnant. The clock is ticking. Alois escalates the request to the highest authority on earth. He petitions the Holy See. The request travels over the Alps, all the way to Rome. Imagine the absurdity of this moment. The future of the 20th century hangs on a clerk in the Vatican reading a letter from a minor Austrian customs official. The petition argues that Clara is a suitable wife because she is already caring for Alois's children from his previous marriage. It frames the incestuous bond as a practical convenience. The letter is dry, pleading, and pathetic. It strips away any romance and reduces the union to a matter of household logistics. Rome deliberates. And then the decision arrives. The papal dispensation is granted. The church waives the ban on incest. On January 7, 1885, early in the morning, the wedding takes place. It is not a celebration. It is a formality. There are few guests. The ceremony is short. There is no joy, only the satisfaction of paperwork being completed. Clara Pölzl becomes Clara Hitler. But the shadow of that dispensation hangs over the house. They are a couple who exist only by special permission. They have turned inward, locking the genetic door. This act of keeping it in the family creates a psychological hothouse. The Hitler household becomes a hermetically sealed environment. They are isolated from the outside world, bound together by secrets in a shared blood that the church had to forgive. In this closed loop, reality is distorted. The father's rage has no witness. The mother's pain has no escape. And the children born into this union will carry the biological and psychological weight of a family that was never supposed to exist. The first of these children are coming, and the tragedy is about to begin. The house in Braunau is not filled with the sound of playing children. It is filled with the silence of the dead. Between 1885 and 1887, the Hitler household becomes a morgue. We must understand the sheer density of this trauma to understand what follows. Clara gives birth to her first son, Gustav. He is a healthy boy. Alois is proud, the bloodline is secured. But 7 months later, the fever strikes. Diphtheria. The throat closes, the breathing stops. Gustav is dead. Before the grief can even settle, Clara is pregnant again. Ida is born. She lives for 2 years. Then, the same darkness returns. Ida dies. Then comes Otto. He dies days after birth. 3 tiny coffins in 3 years. Clara stands in the local cemetery looking at the fresh earth. She is a woman dismantled by loss. In the rural Catholic superstition of the time, neighbors whisper. They wonder if this is God's punishment for the incestuous marriage. Is the blood too close? Is the biology rejecting itself? Clara, devout and anxious, likely internalizes this. She believes she is cursed. She believes she is failing her duty to her husband. Alois, however, reacts with cold detachment. He retreats further into his work, his uniform, and his tavern visits. He views the deaths not as a heartbreak, but as a nuisance, a delay in his plans. The emotional gap between the husband and wife widens into a canyon. And then, on April 20th, 1889, the 4th child is born. It is a boy, pale, blue-eyed. They name him Adolf. This is the psychological pivot point of history. Adolf does not enter a normal family. He enters a home that is vibrating with the ghosts of his dead siblings. To Clara, he is a miracle. He is the survivor. But psychologically, he becomes something dangerous, the replacement child. Clara pours all the grief, all the love, and all the anxiety intended for 3 dead children into this one living boy. She watches him with terrified eyes. Every cough, every sneeze triggers a panic attack. She suffocates him with protection. She keeps him close, shielding him from the world, shielding him from the father, shielding him from reality. She breastfeeds him longer than usual. She indulges his every whim because she is terrified he will vanish like the others. Adolf grows up believing he is the center of the universe because his mother's trauma makes him the center of hers. He absorbs her anxiety. He learns that he is very special, fragile, and infinitely precious. But he also observes the threat. The father who looms in the background, indifferent to this preciousness. The dynamic is locked. The mother worships the boy, and the boy worships the mother, while the father waits in the shadows with his cane. The spoiled prince is being forged in a furnace of maternal grief. The dynamic shifts again. Alois Hitler retires. For a man whose entire identity is built on the uniform, retirement is not a rest, it is a death sentence. He loses his rank, he loses his staff, he loses the public gaze that kept his ego inflated. He buys a farm in Huffeld, forcing the family into isolation. Now the only subjects left to command are his wife and his children. Alois discovers a new hobby, beekeeping. This is a terrifyingly perfect metaphor for his psychology. He loves the bees because they are absolute. They have a strict hierarchy. They have a queen. They work until they die. And if they disobey or fail, they are cast out. It is a world of perfect, stinging order. He wants his family to be a hive. But children are not bees, they are chaotic. And the eldest son, Alois Jr., runs away, unable to take the abuse. This leaves young Adolf, now 6 years old, as the sole target of the father's frustration. The violence begins. It is not discipline in the traditional sense. It is a transfer of rage. Alois keeps a hippopotamus hide whip on the table. He calls for the boy. The beatings are ritualistic, systematic. Adolf describes these moments years later, not with tears, but with a chilling pride. He recalls resolving not to cry, to count the blows, to turn his heart into stone. He engages in a psychological duel with his father. You can hurt my body, but you cannot break my will. He learns to dissociate from pain. He learns that compassion is a liability. And where is Clara? She is there, hovering in the doorway, wringing her hands. She cannot stop the hand of the master. She waits until the beating is over, then she rushes in to comfort the boy, weeping over his bruises. This creates a catastrophic split in the boy's psyche. He hates his father, yet he subconsciously admires the power. He sees that the father is the one who acts, who controls, who instills fear. He loves his mother, yet he subconsciously despises her weakness. He sees that the mother is the one who suffers, who submits, who loses. In the mind of the young Adolf Hitler, a binary world is constructed. There are only two categories of existence: the hammer and the anvil, the predator and the prey, the victor and the victim. He decides in the silence of that bruised childhood that he will never be the victim again. He will wear the uniform. He will hold the whip. He will demand the silence. The domestic tyranny of the father is being downloaded, file by file, into the software of the son. The farm in Hoffeld fails. The bees die. But the lesson survives. The story ends with two graves. In 1903, Alois Hitler collapses in a tavern. A lung hemorrhage. He dies as he lived, sudden, violent, and messy. The tyrant is gone. The 13-year-old Adolf does not weep for the loss of a father. He weeps for the loss of the structure. He is now the man of the house, free to indulge in his delusions of grandeur without the check of reality. 4 years later, in 1907, Clara dies. Breast cancer. Her death destroys him. The only person capable of loving him, the only human connection he has to warmth, is extinguished. The mechanism is now complete. The boy is 18. He possesses the God complex instilled by his mother's excessive worship, fused with the brutal dominance learned from his father's whip. He has no empathy, for empathy was beaten out of him. He has no humility, for humility was treated as a sin. He packs his bags for Vienna. He carries the trauma of the incestuous bloodline, the ghosts of his dead siblings, and the rage of the custom official's home. He walks out of the domestic shadow and onto the stage of history. We look back at this marriage not to excuse the crimes of the man, but to understand the recipe of the monster. The millions who died in the 1940s are the macrocosmic echoes of the blows that fell in a small kitchen in Austria in the 1890s. The monster is gone, but the mechanism, the silence, the abuse, the toxic loyalty remains. History is a warning. If we do not understand the roots, we are doomed to inherit the fruit. Subscribe, analyze, never forget.